straightforward stuff.
Thank you for joining us, everyone, for another episode of Creatives Chat, episode 39, featuring Gary Barquet and Sean Jones. Join us as we chat about who knows what.
It gets deep.
It gets deep.
Our show shall begin now. Streaming from Retro Earth Studio and brought to you by wearehistorically.com, Conscious Human Apparel, and
Learn to play jazz piano like a pro, by a pro, with Jazz Piano Pro Essentials at jazzpianopro.com.
And thank you for joining us on Creatives Chat. Hi, I'm Rusty.
I'm Peter.
And Peter, we have a couple special guests lined up today. Why don't you tell our viewers who we have on our show?
Oh, Rusty, I'm incredibly excited to introduce two of my O'Day brothers. They are a financial advisor and a loan officer, and we're going to dive deep into everything about financial empowerment today.
All right, well, I'm getting my pen and paper out. Everybody, meet Gary and Sean.
Oh, Gary and Sean, I'm so excited to have you guys on the show today. How you guys doing today?
I'm doing well, sir. How are you?
Great.
Doing good. Well, let's just get started. Now, we all have that O'Day connection, and I think one of the things that I really took appreciation for is the different perspective and really that kind of elite mentality into life. And one of the biggest games of the elite and the rich in the world today is the financial industry. And not only that, just like the home and real estate market. So I'm incredibly excited to talk with you guys about not only your businesses, but everything that you guys are working on and what really brought you there. So why don't we start off by letting the listeners know a little bit something about yourself? Who wants to lead us off with a little introduction?
Kick us off, Sean.
Oh, man, I'll kick it off then. I'm Sean Jones, and I'm connected with Peter through high school. We went to high school together. Man, it's awesome to see Peter flourish into his creative self. And I'm not surprised to see him doing this thing right now. And so I'm a financial advisor at Northwestern Mutual. And so what we do is we help people with the offensive planning, whether it be investing, whether it be planning for retirement, growing their assets in a strategic way, also with the defensive planning, with insurance, life insurance, disability insurance, protecting your income, but ultimately just really aligning the goals with kind of what you're doing with your finances. And a lot of the conversation usually directs to the goals, or when talking about the goals, a lot of the conversation is, hey, I want to be a homeowner. And so that's kind of how I got connected with Gary, is reaching out to Gary, saying like, hey man, you're a loan officer. I was connected to him through Miles Long, another O'Day grad. Like, hey man, you're a loan officer. I'm connected with a lot of people who want to be in your world. Let's connect, let's network. And turns out me and him kind of clicked. We're hella cool. We clicked right off the bat. And so then we just started talking about, hey, let's do some networking together, just because of the connection and how we vibe together. And so we've been working on together and doing some things. And everyone's told me at least, it's going to be tough getting started. And it has been, but it's taught me a lot of skills. And I've learned, opened a lot of doors, been connecting with a lot of people. Wouldn't be connected with Peter if I wasn't in this field. That's kind of what I'm doing right now. Still training too on the side on the weekends, coaching co-performance. I'll throw a plug in there as well. Yeah.
Hey, there you go.
Yes,
I love
sir.
it.
Yes,
Well,
sir.
Gary, why don't you lead us out? Tell us a little more about yourself.
Absolutely. Well said too, by the way, Sean. Everything he said was 100% on point, and I appreciate Peter, you having us on here, and me being an O'Day alum too. I think it just kind of goes to show the power of the network and the brotherhood that can form outside of those high school years. Because to be completely honest, I didn't even want to go to O'Day, and this is something I don't tell a lot of people, and I don't talk about all the time. But I was a young man who went from Meany Middle School, which was a predominantly Black African American school, and then I kind of got flipped on my head when I went to O'Day High School. It was a wake up call for me quite a bit. So I wasn't comfortable in my early years, but I was able to kind of build some key relationships, and then over time I kind of developed into the man and kind of built those relationships. And again, I just think this podcast is kind of an example of that O'Day brotherhood and network outside of high school. So kudos for all of us to put this to exercise and put it to use, right? But anyways, I'm a born and raised Seattleite. Grew up in South Seattle, and right now I graduated from Washington State University with a degree in human development psychology. So I was all about people and understanding human behavior, influence. I was just very interested on how environment shapes the human over time, and kind of and the why behind a lot of that stuff. So that was what I was very passionate and interested in. But when it comes to that industry, there's not many lucrative jobs, to be completely honest with you. It typically is the school counselors, which we all know people don't get paid as much as they should in the education system. Not to say they don't get paid decent or well, but they should get paid a lot more for what they do. And I kind of figured that out relatively quick. So I ended up getting some opportunities in business, and then I decided to go down the business route, just being aware that we live in a country that essentially is a business. It is a giant corporation, and I figured that out. So that was kind of my reasoning behind going the business route, but still maintaining what I cared about and what I was passionate about in human development and just working with kids. So I still I'm actually an ambassador on Treehouse, which is a nonprofit who deals with children who experience foster care. I do that type of stuff. I still love to do that. I still take my time to do it. But anyways, I graduated from Wazoo, got my degree, and then I ended up going to Target, was a manager there for a year. I went to this company called Centos, was a manager there for a couple years, and then I ended up getting into lending, which I had no sight into getting into. This was not a path that I envisioned myself heading down. This was an opportunity that came knocking on my door, and I decided to kind of seize it and bet on myself and take the gamble and take the risk. And all of my skills that I've developed through my early years outside of college have really kind of suited me well into getting to where I am now. So again, just like Sean said, he's in the financial advising side. I got a financial advisor when I was 22. It was one of the smartest things I did. And we can dive into further conversation about that as our conversation develops. Nice. But just excited to continue having this conversation, because Sean and I realize the power of what we're doing and kind of how we're trailblazers in these industries, given that we're young African Americans from the millennial generation who are kind of blazing this path, and it's kind of the reality of the situation. So just very excited to have this conversation because it's powerful.
Oh yeah, and I just want to thank you guys, because this is one of the things that just instantly resonates with me, is that when you dive into this financial world, different loans and the different financial institutions, you come to recognize that everything runs as a corporation. You begin to kind of transition and level up from like a temporary just, I'm so focused on right now, to that strategy and like the legacy of what you want to set for yourself. And what's the inspiration for you guys that like really got you into the financial industries or into like the corporate world, and kind of seeing and strategizing and kind of like taking your life in another level and another direction as well?
Yeah.
Who wants to take that one? Let's start with Sean.
Yeah, I'll go first. Yeah, I'll go first with that one. So prior, I did throw a plug to my training brand, which is Coaching Co-Performance. And prior to that, I was, prior to COVID, was training at Coaching Co with Coaching Co-Performance, and also training at several gyms around the area, Orange Theory being one of them. But just COVID kind of caused all the gyms to close. And by nature, just necessity, got bored, one, sitting on the couch, and then two, just really always been interested in money and had a chance to kind of sharpen up my resume, and just kind of was looking to see like what is out there, what are some opportunities, and just never wanted to be in the situation again where I'm like dependent or waiting on a government check. I didn't really, that kind of soured me. And so was really just looking to see like what can I do to kind of develop and grow my skills to get more understanding about money, and the role appeared, and I'm like, this is like right on point with what I'm kind of been thinking of lately. So kind of similar to Gary, the opportunity presented itself and seized it. And so got my insurance license, and now I have my investment license. I'm working on getting my investment license. I have my test next week. But really lack of knowledge prior to this endeavor was what inspired me to get into this. Like just not knowing what the hell is like, how can I grow my money? Like what's an IRA? Like what's return on investment? What is this people talking about option trading and, this GameStop talk, just things like that, just conversations that I couldn't really engage in. And I just really was like, how can I get access to this knowledge? And now that I'm in the door, I realize that the knowledge is out there. It's nothing but a Google search away. But I wouldn't have even known what to look for if I wouldn't have gotten this opportunity, to be honest. And so, yeah, that's kind of why I'm excited to be in the role, regardless of what happens. It's like so much untapped, just so much things out there that they just don't share with you as you're in these, your math classes and your economics classes, and just a lot of stuff that they don't share with you.
100%.
Oh yeah.
100%.
Yeah. I
And
feel that.
for me, I would say it's it was a lot of things. It was kind of like a series of events that kind of led to this enlightenment and this power of wanting to step into something like this or something beyond me. But really, when I was at Target, I was 22 years old. This is kind of where the shift happened for me. I was 22 years old, coming straight out of college with a degree, and again, human development psychology, not a business degree,
Yeah.
anything like that, but I was going straight into a business executive manager role.
Mm.
And I didn't really know anything. And I was put in a position where, again, I was the youngest person, but I was leading a team of like 40 people. So I had 3 supervisors under me. They were all older than me, and they all had been at the company for like 8+ years, 8 years, 12 years, 15 years. So they're looking at me like, who is this young dude thinking he's going to come in here and be our boss and tell us what to do? And I had to learn a lot about myself. I had to learn about who I was. I had to learn about how to create these relationships with people. But over my time at Target, one thing I really learned about other people was that everybody has a vision, or everybody, they have things that they love to do. They have passions, and for whatever reason, they don't pursue them in life. A lot of people, and I
Mm.
realized that when I was at Target, because we were, I was the leader of logistics. So we're waking up at 2, 3 a.m. and we're
Yeah.
replenishing the store before we even get shoppers in there. And I used to think to myself, man, do people really want to put products on shelves for the rest of their lives? And it's not a knock on nobody, but it more so was like, do you really want to do this in life, or are you settling?
Yeah.
And that's kind of the mentality I had when I was at Target. And I just started asking people, what's your dream? What's your vision? What do you like to do? What are you passionate
Mm.
about? I got really curious about that. So when I decided to leave Target, again, I had those open conversations with people. I learned that, I embodied it. And then I was transitioning into my new job, and I had about a month off. And between that month of time that I had off transitioning jobs, I created an LLC called the Conscious Campaign. And the whole purpose
So.
of it was to spread awareness, in
Mm.
plain and simple. And I didn't know exactly how I was going to do it. I just knew, again, that everybody had a vision, and I wanted to help people step into that power, step into that vision, or start taking actions to get in alignment with what they want to do in life. So that was kind of how it all kicked off for me. And then ever since then, I would just say, I don't go to church every week, but I'll tell you straight up that God has kind of led me down this path of, don't worry about what you're doing, just
Mm.
do whatever you're doing well, and I will continue to bless you. Keep giving everything
Yeah.
your all, keep, empowering people along the journey, keep inspiring people, and everything else will line up accordingly. So again, I never seen myself being a financial advisor. I avoided math class in college. I avoided all of it. I was like, what can I do? What major can I pick where I won't have to do math? Oh, human development. Perfect. And I like people. So that's how I picked my major. But again, God has led me down this path of, now I'm learning financials, and I'm able to teach people about it. So it gives me this fire and this inspiration to be able to learn and want to learn and obtain this
Mm.
knowledge. So then that way I can convey it to people, because I'm a people person. So I know I can make those relationships with people, but it's up to me to get this knowledge and then be able to share it. So that's kind of what inspired me, and that's what has me continuing to push in this business world, because again, it wasn't my first instincts to go down this path.
Well, that's the craziest stuff right there. It just sounds like the way I say it too is, life always presents us these opportunities when our heart really wants something different. And I think that's the funniest thing, is just hearing about both of you just kind of manifesting your new roles and positions
Exactly.
is great. But it really stems from that drive for more, of like a deeper understanding, more control. Like, obviously it's tapping into the unknown. And that's the really, I guess you could say it's almost like a crutch, or a disability, that most kids, they don't get taught this type of stuff. And I think
Mhm.
especially, in communities of color, they don't even want to bring up finances for us.
Nope.
And that's been one of the most empowering things I know personally, is recognizing it's like, oh wow, when you actually know how taxes and things work, there's a lot of loopholes. And I mean, it's not even a loophole. If there's a lot of rules and just setups for this, for your own success, if you actually transition yourself into the business and corporate side.
Mhm.
So what's been some of like the biggest like awakenings or kind of revelations for you when you first learned about like the financial industry and just like loans? And especially, I mean, we're like the generation of like, called, we're just always living at our parents' place, or we're just living in an apartment the rest of our lives. Like, how do you transition into this kind of like home mentality, this elite mentality of transitioning into like the elite rich mindset? It's a loaded question. There's a lot in there. Pick and choose what you want. Like sprinkle it in.
I was thinking that, at least for me, when it comes to the financial, like when I first started learning about home loans, for me, I was taken back immediately, just
Mm,
because of the way, even like with the whole crash of the United States, the housing crash in 2008, that was caused as a direct correlation from faulty loans and in risky loans, right? And it just made me realize, wait a second, home loans have the ability to crash the entire economy. And when that kind of started settling in with me, I was like, oh crap, like this is kind of important. Like this, wait a second, like wait. And then after the economic crash happened, that was when they implemented all these new rules. They implemented a whole set of laws, and they started actually holding people accountable for doing things the right way to make sure that the money that they were borrowing people can actually pay it back. They
mm,
were giving out money. They called them Nina loans, and no income, no assets, no problem. Sign your name here. You'll still get this money. I don't care if you can't pay it next week. You're going to be obligated to pay it at some point. And it was ruining people's lives in reality. It really was. There were people out there who were getting homes that they couldn't afford, but
yeah,
if they were given the opportunity to get this money, they were going to take it. And it was
yeah,
a faulty system. And it just kind of, again, it reminded me just of I don't want to get too deep on it or talk crazy about it, because I think I'm in the position to do the right thing now, right? And I want to make that clear. There's a lot of good people in the industry, such as myself, and I know a lot of other people personally and good companies out there, such as Caliber. But again, long story short, I think that initial understanding of the impact of the economy just through the housing market alone is pretty eye-opening, because at the end of the day, we all need a place to live. We all
yeah,
need a place to live, and it's never going to go out of style. So it's just such a big part of the American lifestyle is home ownership.
yeah. And then
That's
escaping
awesome.
the design corruption and truth.
Right? Right? And it's just like, yeah, it's crazy.
Well, I want to tap in with you, Sean. Like, in terms of just recognizing I mean, that we're a really big culture that's financially illiterate. Like, what were the first steps that you had to kind of take to really educate yourself, and what would be some of like the advice you would give to like listeners that are really scared about a lot of this stuff? Because I know, like, when you start thinking about it, you talk like ROIs, you can think about all the different IRAs, just all the different types of loans and different holdings you can do. Like, it's
Yeah.
pretty overwhelming. So like, where did you start? Like, where would you suggest people start?
Yeah, man. And I guess that's kind of a loaded question too. How I started, how I started for me was first, like, I've never had a conversation really with an advisor before. And so for me, coming into the business, like, we could have sat down and we could go through the books, and we could have, they could have sat me through a million slideshows, but I don't know about you guys, but I need to sit down and I need to go through the experience. Like, let
Yeah.
me get the experience of what it is like to sit down with an advisor. Let me feel that. And so, having gone through that process myself, I thought it was really cool to see that there are a lot of things that I could be utilizing that I just had no clue existed. Like, again, like, just the different types of IRAs, like there being a Roth in a traditional setting, the tax implications of it, the different types of life insurance, not just only the term, but there being a whole life or a permanent type of life insurance that has cash value inside. The things that the penalties of taking money out early from certain investments,
Yeah.
and then there being funds that diversify your investments for you, and just like, it's like, I was just like, wow, like, there's a lot of things I could be doing instead of me just saving my $100 in my savings account, getting no interest, or, me, just having, on the other end, having, a bunch of money in savings, and having no income protection in place, and just thinking about all these things and putting everything in perspective, and like kind of congregating it all in one document was really nice to see, because it's like, there's a lot of things all over the place when it comes to finances, and when you're being actually strategic with it, there's a lot of moving parts. And I think that's why a lot of people just say, F it, like, I can pay my bills, my bills are paid, I got a little money in my pocket, like, we're good.
True.
I don't got time or energy to deal with all that other stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, and it's pushed upon us too, because in truth, like once you get over like the the acronyms and like the straight up definitions, you start to understand the structures of things. Like
Yeah.
it's actually pretty straightforward stuff. Like
Yeah.
it's
Facts.
like, oh.
Facts.
I think
They
the
give you, yeah, they
acronyms,
confuse you.
the acronyms are big. We deal with a lot of long-term investing. A lot of people strategically planning for retirement, not necessarily trading throughout the day. And so, but it's the talk of all the Instagram, of all the Facebook posts. You see everyone talking about it. So I'm just like, let me see what this is. And a lot of it is just acronyms to kind of complicate the idea of, hedging on the idea of a company going up or a company going down. Just really just confusing language around that. And it's just like, why make it so confusing, But 100% acronyms, I find it really funny.
100%. Real quick too. I want to interject. I want to give a little personal testimony to having a financial advisor and what it's done for me, because I got a financial advisor at 22, which is, I feel like it's rare for a lot of people. And it was a risk, to be completely honest. I didn't know exactly what was going to come out of it. And I had people that were advising against it. I had, my mom and grandma who were like, and then even a best friend who were just like, be careful. They're going to get you for the fees. They're going to do this and do that. And I took all that in consideration. I knew some of it was, hey, they are going to be making some money off of my money, but if they can give me some return on money, then hey, you can take your little piece and it's a win-win for me. I win too.
Right.
But it was more so for me, it was the literacy part, like you were talking about, Sean. Like nobody in my family was very financially literate, at least on a high level. So in my mind, it was like, no disrespect to nobody, but why would I follow everybody else's suit if they're not tapped into the level that I want? And that's just being completely honest and completely straightforward. It's like, who had a financial advisor? My wealthiest friend. My wealthiest friend. So I was like, let me do the math here. I kind of want to head down this path, and blaze this path. So I'm going to take a risk and I'm going to try something a little bit different. And it worked in my favor. And really early on, the conversation, just like Sean said, sitting down and having those conversations and having somebody who's willing to kind of walk you through things. And obviously it has to be someone that you trust and someone that you have a real relationship with. That's a big piece of the equation. Because early on, I was like, look, shoot it to me straight. Look, I need this real. Look, I just want to know. Like, I just was being very straightforward about what I needed from him, and he provided it for me. And it was a brother, so it did help me kind of build some of that trust. And he was talking about diversifying my portfolio, having my money in different places, and just like Sean said, it was a long-term game. So I have this life insurance account that is it's a cash value life insurance account, and it but it kind of breaks even after 10 years, and then it starts to gain like a positive return. So I remember about a few years in, I called him one day and I was like, hey, man, I can't do this no more, man. Because I had got my money pulled on the same day that I got paid. So as soon as I got paid, I seen like a part of my paycheck just get cut out. And I was kind of pissed about it. I was just like, man, I just got paid, man. So I can't do this no more. This sacrifice ain't worth it. And I tried to quit him. And he was like, hey, you know what, Gary, I wouldn't be doing you any favors. He was like, I told you early on, this is a long-term game. This is a long-term game. Like, this isn't about the now. This is about when you're in your 30s and when you're in your 40s. Like, this isn't about right now. And I thought about it. I was like, you're so right, bro. Thanks for talking me off the cliff, because your boy was about to jump off. I was about to be like, nope. But he was completely right. And then a small, quick example is I have this another account called a brokerage account. And I like to tell everybody about this account because it is a very accessible account that you can stack money in. And it doesn't have a bunch of return on investment or anything like that, but it's like an additional savings account. But I have an automatic payment set to it where it pulls. I started off with like $25 a month. I was like, just start off with $25 a month, and then at any moment I can up it or subtract it or lower it. And right now I have over $7,000 sitting in it. And I'm not saying that because I don't even think that's a big number or anything like that, but this is just money that I never thought about. I didn't think about it. It was just started off as small amounts. When I had more money, I added more every single month. And when I needed that money, I would subtract a little bit. I played this game where now I have a few grand, $7,000 sitting in this account, and my car's having issues now. It might be time for me to get a new car. Instead of me struggling and pulling money directly out of my savings, what am I going to do? I'm going to go to that brokerage account, take that money that I've been saving for the last few years and apply that to getting a new car type of thing. So it's just like, when you're getting ahead of the game, when you're thinking like that financially and planning for your future, I think having a financial advisor is almost a no-brainer in a lot of ways. So that was a long story, but I wanted to share that because it played a big impact in my life.
Did he create like a conservative portfolio for you, Gary? Is that what he did, or fund?
You said conservative portfolio?
Yeah. What is that?
Ours is actually, I don't. It's life insurance, brokerage. I don't know, probably the main stuff. And then nice. I just know, and now we're investing pretty aggressively.
You read it.
See, I love that. Well, it's like how many people get caught up in and this is a detriment to like about kind of like pre-designed corruption, pre-designed oppression in a lot of different ways of most people miss out on this idea of just understanding it's like, oh, I could put a little bit in right now and I can actually have that accumulate and accrue, and just instead of getting like coffees, I can just take that money, put that in, and then over years, I now have an emergency fund. I now have a bonus like, oh, maybe I want to treat myself fund.
Pop my MacBook with the exactly.
Right. And I think that's something right there where
funny.
it's like people get so caught up in the instant gratification, and they really do condition people. Because I mean, I know, Gary, you mentioned the housing market crash from what, 08, 09.
08, 09, yep.
And my next door neighbor lost their house. Same thing. Same exact thing. Just one day they were gone. Bank took their house, foreclosed on them. And it's incredibly scary when you think about how many people, it's probably more now since we're living pre, post, and during Rona. How many people, it was like, what, 60%, 70% don't even have enough to cover like $500, like an emergency.
Yep.
You know, how much more has that escalated since this stuff? So it's like, this is amazing content right here that, you know, people really need to understand it. It's the little things that really add up in the long run.
I'll just add this before you go. And one last thing is like, just talk with my mentor. I talk with an advisor. They pair me up with someone who's been in the business who I can kind of lean on and ask questions and do some joint work with as well. But just like, you know, like we talk about sexy stuff like investments and the defensive planning, like insurance, but ideally like the real value that we bring to the client is honestly the planning and really breaking down the budget. Thanks. And like, it sounds like really like one-on-one, but like, just asking you, Peter, when's the last time you sat down and calculated how much money you spend and how much money you bring in a month?
Oh, well, I mean, if I didn't do business, never. But like, because of my businesses, I'm always thinking budgets. I'm always tracking receipts. I'm always, because again, taxes and like tax write-offs and all that. But like, if I didn't have that, probably never. I didn't grow up in a home like that. I have parents that made money, but and this is not a knock on you, mom and dad, I'm sorry, but you guys did not manage your money well. There's a reason why one of my brothers went into wealth management, is because of this, seeing the way we grew up and just seeing the way, you know, people would spend money, and just knowing that it's like, dude, if I want to really live that baller life, that elite lifestyle, I got to start thinking rich.
Doing things differently,
you know? Oh, that's great. Well, just in terms of like the importance of mentorship, how has that helped you really kind of navigate, Sean?
It's been nice. I mean, I have I have one mentor who's affiliated with Northwestern Mutual, and another mentor who's not affiliated with Northwestern Mutual. And so it's nice having both guys in my corner. I've learned from both individuals. They both have different tidbits to add. You know, I learn from Gary every time I hang with Gary. I've learned from you. I try to learn from every interaction. But it is really nice to like be like, yo, I had a situation where, you know, the client has a 401k that she's moving over from, you know, her military position. You know, this is how you handle that. You know, this is something that we need to make sure you're leveraging, or, you know, something that you're bringing to their attention, you know, or, you know, the client has someone that, you know, this is someone that recently, you know, has a special needs. The parent or the client is a special needs child. You know, how do what's the best thing to be showing them? What should I make sure that I cover with them? You know, so it's really nice to have those people in your corner that have done it and like can like, you know, answer questions for you. And also, it's like I think I said this when I started. It's a rough business getting started. Starting anything, as I'm reminding myself, starting anything is rough. So it's nice to have someone to just like give you some encouragement, give you some again tips to that they've experienced having gone to the same position. So it's really nice leveraging the people that they assign for you as mentors. Yeah.
Oh yeah. That's incredibly important. I think that's the role that I kind of want to push and pitch for the audience, is that these are your financial mentors. You know, that's what you have to look at. And I think that's the real role of a financial advisor. Because I mean, think about it like this. How much could we change a generation if every high school student had to meet with a financial advisor before they graduated?
Trajectories would start changing.
Right?
Period. The whole generation. Yep.
And I guess that's the kind of the next step that I want to transition this into, is because, you know, when you get the money, you make the money. What do you do with it? And in terms of a lot of things now, I know buying a home is really a distant dream for a lot of people, especially in our generation. A lot of them can't even fathom it, considering they're paying, you know, like whatever they are for their apartment, or they're living at home still. Like, how do you coach the youth to really have the confidence and courage to like take charge of your finances and to buy a home?
hmm I would say knowledge is power. And that's why a big part of my team's focus is empowering people through education. And I'm sure, you know, Sean has the same type of mentality and approach, is that we have to teach people and show people what it
Mm,
can do for you. You know, it's one thing to try to pitch or sell people like, you should do this, you should get a house, you should get a house, you should get a house, you should get a house. But
mm.
if I told you I made 40 grand in equity just from owning a house in a year, are you starting? Okay, you starting to listen to me now? Is it starting to hit a little bit different now? Like, do you hear what I'm saying? And I think that's the
Yeah.
big piece of it, because a lot of people just don't have that knowledge in terms of the power in the vehicle that owning a home is in America. You know, it's one of the
Yeah.
safest, most long-term investments, and it's consistent year over year. Like if you look at the 10-year treasury, the 10-year growth rate of home ownership, it goes up. It's trending upwards. So it's a safe investment vehicle. And just like the concept that we were talking about before, you need a place to live anyway. You're going to be paying for somewhere to live anyway. Why not pay in something that has some return on investment, and something that has the opportunity to be passed down generation to generation and create that generational wealth that
Mm,
a lot of us seek and a lot of us don't have, especially in the African American community or the people of color, just any type of lower
yeah.
socioeconomic statuses. We don't have those vehicles, you know. And if your parents don't own their home and they're in debt, then what does that debt do? It gets passed on to the next generation. Now you know, and
Right?
that's sick, right? Like it's sick when you think about it, and we don't think about that stuff. It's just kind of the cards that a lot of people were dealt. So for me, I think that the biggest element is just really being able to educate people and show them what home ownership can do for them. And then I think that'll start to open up eyes and engage that interest. But
Mm,
it's getting harder and harder to get a home, especially in our city. We live in one of the most fastest growing cities in the United States. And I really want people to be aware of this, because
yeah.
it's not getting easier. You got people who make a lot of money that are moving here and that have been here, and our transportation system isn't even done being built. So this city is growing
Right.
immensely. And if you don't start preparing now, you're going to be left out, or you're going to be forced. You're not going to have much choice of where you live. And that's going to be a difficult pill to swallow. So if you love this city, if you plan on staying in this city, start planning and get ahead of the game now, because it ain't slowing down, and it's getting harder and harder to get your in.
Mm. No, that's facts
That's
right
some good
there.
points. It's some good points. And I just want to, before I forget, you touched on something, Gary, about that. Another reason why me and Gary have teamed up is the need for life insurance with
Mm,
people in the home buying market. You just mentioned it. Mom dies and the house isn't paid for, and she doesn't have a
true.
policy. If she has life insurance, then the policy passes through something which is called probate. Doesn't have to get basically taxed by the government. It goes directly to the family or the beneficiary, and they can pay off the home, and now the home is in the family and they can do what they want with it. But if mom or dad doesn't have a life insurance policy, or doesn't have assets that she can pay off the debt when she passes, then what happens is, when everyone dies, we go through what's called probate. And probate looks at us basically, and the government says, what does Peter or what does Sean owe? And they're going to take
Mm,
what I owe. And so life insurance, the death benefit of life insurance doesn't travel through probate. It goes directly to the beneficiary. And so another thing that rich people do is they leverage life insurance, and they also leverage the whole life, permanent life insurance, the cash value aspect of that,
Yes,
converting
sir.
mm.
taxable assets into something that comes to you tax free. All right.
Yeah.
And so that's like the higher level stuff when we start talking to people in certain tax brackets. And then just people also just interested in in the idea of leveraging something that's not connected to the market, that's only connected to my health and age,
Mm.
and leveraging that as an investment vehicle. So if that people are interested in that, that's something that's really cool. People like that.
Yeah.
And right there, I'm sure this conversation's already blown some people's minds, because
I
again,
seriously.
you don't even think about these types of things until you start to pivot yourself in that, when we call it the rich or the elite mentality. And it's like, you just start playing the rich people's game. Like, people need to understand, like, how you get rich is you understand these rules and regulations so you can use the system. It's
Facts.
built for this. Like, it is, we
Facts.
are like technically America's structured like a corporation. When you use the loopholes or the laws that are there, you can level yourself up. And that is how you create the generational wealth. You create a legacy. You step out of the traps and the cycles of just like instant gratification, always being broke, running around for your bills.
You
And
get
it blows my
choices.
mind.
Yeah. You get choices, you get tools, you get resources, and now you can do some of the stuff that you really want to do.
And that right there, I think, is kind of the motivation for why there's such a big trap of why people get caught up into it. Because what happens when everyone's empowered? What happens when everyone can do what they want to do? We actually have a competitive market. Like, oh my gosh, this is crazy. Like,
Mhm.
this is all about making conscious choices, baby. Like, when you do that, you really do take the reins in your own life, and you don't get abused by the system because you know how to play the game. Like,
There you
oh,
go.
I
There you
love
go.
this. I
That's
love this,
pure
guys.
truth. This is a great convo. Honestly, this is the type of podcast I've really been looking forward to get on. I'm loving the conversation, y'all.
Well, how do you guys transition like this? How do you take your kind of entrepreneurial mindset and that creative spirit and transition it into this financial market and the housing industry? Like, what are you using to level yourselves up and kind of free
Mhm.
yourself from the generational suffering that we've all experienced at this point?
Yeah, a great question. I think a part of it is kind of what I had got out earlier as far as understanding what I'm passionate about,
Yeah.
and understanding what I'm good at. Like, what are my natural strengths? Like, I really had to take
Mm,
a look at myself in a mirror, and I think a lot of people struggle with that conversation and struggling understanding what they're naturally good at or what they've been blessed with, and then finding ways to capitalize on that. And like I said, my blessing and things that I understood, but I was very people oriented early on, and I had a good and keen sense of right and wrong at an early age. And that was just something where it was like, it doesn't matter what I get into, I know that I'm still going to remain myself. So really for me, as far as like my approach, my marketing strategy, how I put myself out there, I just really want to be as authentic as possible, but still also being able to play that game that you're talking about. And it's a fine balance. Let's be completely honest about it. Especially as an African American, we know we got to put on some math sometimes, we got to shift our energy sometimes, we got to play this game at a different level,
yeah.
and I'm aware of that too. But like I said, it's a part of who I am, and I love it, man. Honestly, like I really have found a way to be able to be myself and understand my values, and what my values are. And then, like I said, it doesn't matter what I get plugged into. As long as I have a keen sense of my values and who I am, I can create positive results and change. So I hope that actually answers your question, but that's kind of what I was getting at. It's just the authenticity, like bringing my authentic self into any industry that I am. And then even in this financial world, and being able to translate
Mm,
some of this jargon and these acronyms that we're talking about into plain language for people. Like, my people don't speak this language. They weren't educated on this language. So I'm going to
mm,
understand, and it's going to go through me, go through my heart and my, my translation or whatever. And now it's going to come out to the people in a way that they can understand and relate to.
mm, mm. No, I love it. Taking your life and really just putting your shine and mix into it. I mean, that's just the creative spirit right there.
Period. Hmm.
What you got, Sean? What about yourself? Because I know, like for yourself too, like you do the fitness. I've seen you making moves. I see your posts. You're really trying to educate and inspire people. Like, how do you
Yeah.
tap into your like entrepreneurial spirit and that creative mentality and transition into this financial industry for your clients, for yourself? How do you put the Sean twist into it?
Yeah, man. So getting started, my mission now is to kind of don't get distracted with the end results. Although things have been going well in terms of the numbers, keeping up with the people joining the class and all that good stuff. But one thing I will say is it's not as a priority. It's not as an urgent priority. Finances is not as of an urgent priority as I would have thought, for some of these people. And for a lot of the population, and it's kind of been funny for a lot of people I'm talking to. It seems to be the people that are in a more established position are more eager to make a jump or to make a commitment or to make a move, to do something drastic or to do something strategic with their finances. And it's kind of fun. It's sad and funny how that works. And I would say, though, I'm separating myself by just trying to, what Gary said, talk in layman's terms, speak in layman's terms, and try to create as many connections as possible. Just get in front of and have this conversation with as many people as possible. And hopefully they
Yeah.
find value in that experience. And if anything, we made a great connection you know now that what I do, and I know now what you do, and hopefully the fact that also that I'm in connections with a lot of different people you never know. Maybe you're a t-shirt designer and I'm talking to a business owner,
Yeah.
I can connect you, so not only do I want to be an advisor, but also just a connector. So in essence, I try to just tell myself, just make as many connections as possible, try to share this stuff with as many people as possible. And how can I benefit, how can I bring value to the people that I'm in front of.
Facts. And
Oh,
one thing I want to
love
say
it.
too, real quick, is I never understood I was a entrepreneur. Like I never even I didn't know what it really was for a while. You hear people talk about it, you think entrepreneur are just people that are already making money or people that are already established in a certain way. We kind of discredit ourselves sometimes and realizing like what we truly can bring to the table on our own, based off of our own skill sets and our own networks and our own connections. So I would really inspire anybody coming up, especially coming out of high school and whatnot, to tap into your entrepreneurial mindset and tap into your entrepreneurial bag. It doesn't mean that you're going to be an entrepreneur, but just be able to understand and have that mentality of, if SHIT hits the fan, I have an escape in the sense that I have skills that I can apply to produce me money no matter what. Because you'll realize too, with these large corporations, and a lot of them are phenomenal. There are phenomenal companies out there that do the right things and that take care of people for life. But there also are a lot of situations, circumstances, and companies where you can be left hanging on your ass. And I felt that, as an individual who executed, who showed up every single day, who did their best, who produced results, I still was left in a tough situation once COVID hit. And I just thought to myself, like, wait a second, like I did everything right. I followed the formula. I showed up every day. I was loyal. I didn't call out. I, produced results. I was top of the leaderboards. But yet when things got tough for the company, they'll turn their back on you sometimes. So, and not, like I said, not all the time, but just speaking real candidly based off of my experience, you got to be ready to always have a plan B or some skill sets in your bag to do what you need to do. So entrepreneurship it's the future.
Yeah. I would, just a tad bit, and also just like constantly developing, like the skills that Gary's learning, the skills that I'm learning for whoever's listening to this, the skills that we're gaining from this experience are going to be able to transfer to whatever else that we decide to add.
Yeah. Well, that right there is something that I find always fascinating, is that the one thing that really sticks out to me is your guys's, it's that authenticity. It's that bringing your own unique skill set to this new industry to really help people. And it's that compassionate and service oriented mentality that I see as the ultimate way we change culture. I think of all the different institutions we have that are designed to help and heal people, but we don't sell cures, and this is what I'm really excited about, is seeing, young entrepreneurs, young creatives, like really making their own in this industry and these new industries that are developing, and empowering people. Like it's super exciting to me, because again, it's like, I just think, like, how can we change a generation? Like, how do we avoid the trap? How do we uplift Black America? Like, people that don't understand, a little history lesson, like Black Wall Street, Black America used to be the wealthiest in America. We used to run things, but there was also racist tax, governmental sabotage that really crippled the Black economy. And that's what people don't understand, is that it did split and diverge because of racism and Jim Crow and all that. But Black Americans, we have like a history of actually being the hustlers of the world and really understanding how things work. And I feel like within these past 20, 40 years, all that understanding of our history and our roots, and like the greatness of like Harlem, like Black Wall Street, like just is gone. And most people don't understand. It's like, we used to have generational wealth. We used to be on par with that. And then we got scrubbed, and then people of color kind of got scrubbed under that. So to hear what you guys are doing right now is incredibly inspiring, because I hope that this is that message and really just lights the fire under the youth's ass to make them understand that, like, if you want to escape the trap, you've got to play the game differently. You got to approach it differently. And it starts within. You have to look at yourself differently. Like, what do you want to do? How do you want to be as an adult? Like, where do you want to retire? I think of that all the time. Like, where do I want to be at? I want to retire. I got like 3-4 years until my retirement date is set, and I'm on track. I'm doing all right. So
I want to be on Brazil somewhere. You know what I'm saying? Sipping some of whatever I want. Like that's what I want to be doing. I want to be in South Africa with a view of off the coast. Like, when you envision that type of stuff, you got to do some things differently to be able to create that type of reality. So I hear exactly what you're saying, and I think about it all the time. It has to be top of mind.
And it should, and I guess the real important thing is, I see everything as grace. So one of the things that I saw, like the coronavirus was an act of grace because it caused a lot of pivots to happen and a lot of opportunities and things to happen in my life, just like it sounds like your guys's as well. And that's the opportunity to recognize is don't put yourself in that position where you have to react and adapt. It's like if you think about this stuff and you use that imagination, you can start to navigate things. And I think financial literacy and just understanding like the markets of like property owning, home management, home owning, like that's just the tip of the iceberg, but it's such a crucial piece of the puzzle,
So crucial.
especially like landlords.
Yeah, like I'm a landlord right now. I'm a landlord right now.
So tell me a little bit more. You're a landlord right now. How'd you transition into that?
Yeah, and capitalize. That's the perfect word. But so I bought my first condo. It's coming up on 2 years, and time flies. Really, it does. It doesn't seem like it, but I bought my first condo in Renton. Making about, just for some perspective, I think it's important to provide perspective for people. Making about 50, 60K a year for a couple years. I was able to buy a condo on my own, and I didn't have a ton of expenses. I had student loans. I was able to, once I left college, I was able to live with my grandma for a little bit. I didn't have a car payment, so some of those elements kind of put me ahead in terms of my ability to save money. But ultimately, it still came down to the discipline of me saving money. But anyways, I was able to save up about 20, 30,000, and once I hit that 30,000 mark, I was able to look into getting a home. And what that meant, I kept my credit right, and I reached out to my realtor. A friend, I had just a close friend who bought a house, and obviously I kind of followed suit. He connected me to a realtor. I had that conversation. Long story short, I was able to get pre-approved, and I ultimately was like, you know what, I'm doing it. I'm doing it. Whatever it looks like, I'm doing it. So I ended up getting a condo out here in Renton. It's a really nice spot. It's perfect for me right now, and the way that I ended up becoming a landlord was I did something called house hacking. So I listened to this podcast called Bigger Pockets Podcast, and it's all about real estate. Like it's like one of the number one real estate investing podcasts out there, period. And the reason I love it is because they bring people from all different walks and levels of investing. So from, small timers like myself, even to multi-millionaire commercial, real estate investors, and they just give you perspective. So I learned a little trick called house hacking. So I rent out my second room. I'm in a 2-bedroom condo. I rent out my second room for, 850 plus utilities. So now I'm getting my mortgage sliced in half. So now just think about all that money. So if you calculate that from an annual standpoint, that's about 10,000, upwards $11,000 a year that I'm saving through having a roommate. Now, are there sacrifices involved? Absolutely, because I'm sharing a space with somebody. So there is sacrifice. I will say that very loud and clearly. But when I think about the other side of it and the benefit of it and being able to save that money, and it also has been a benefit for my roommate as well for different reasons, but being able to save that money over the course of a year, that's 10,000 that now I can invest and add on to my equity that I have. Right. Again, that word, is the difference between what I owe on my house and what my value of my current home is. That's equity. So as I, make that upgrade to the next crib, I'm taking that, 40, 50,000 with me in equity, plus that 10,000 that I just got from having a roommate and house hacking. That's the power of home ownership. It's being able to have options and ways that you can play the game. People think once you sign that mortgage, it's like a death wish, even though it actually is like a correlation. Mortgage is like a correlation with death or something like that, but we won't get into that. But anyways, people think once they get into that 30 years, they're like, I'm stuck. Like if I get a mortgage, I'm stuck. There's so many different ways you can play the game. Worst case, you sell it and you go back to wherever you were before. Worst case, you can sell your home. Yeah, you can do that at almost any point. And then, or you could just get a roommate, right? And, it just, again, there's so many different ways to play the game. So the power of home ownership, that's how I became a landlord, was a little bit of house hacking and just renting out a second room that I wasn't doing anything with. So it's been a blessing. And don't get me wrong, there's legalities behind it. I checked credit score. I ran some background checks. Like, you can't let anybody up in your crib. I did all that type of stuff. And then also we have a lease agreement. So there is legality and obligation behind it as well. So you got to do it right. But if you do it right, it can work in your favor.
Nice.
Ooh, I love that.
Yeah, that monthly payment is no joke.
And I think that's something right there that, again, like there's even more options for this aspect too, with the concept of Airbnbs. I know personally there's like mutual friend of ours there's actually 2 of them that I know now, that they've turned like a separate garage into a studio space that is now exactly. So now that's a rented space that is an entirely, well, technically I should say 3. Almost forgot about you, Rusty. You got a little studio in your separate garage too. And that's the thing right there is that, the one that's used for music, and the other one that's used for photography is wild to me. It's just the fact that it's like, they get passive income just whenever they really want to book it, and they don't have to do
Passive
anything
income.
really. And it's a separate space. So it's like there's so many different tricks of the trade and different loopholes. Or I like that, house hacks.
House
I'm gonna have to
hacking.
check out that that you can really capitalize to make these huge pivots. Because how many people will just love that 10G nest egg?
Mhm.
Like
I mean,
that's life saving for some people. It really is. That could
literally.
change the way they see their entire life. And there's so much potential with this stuff. And I think the one thing that I really want to kind of empower the listeners with is, what were some of the bigger, I know you mentioned a podcast already, like what are some of the bigger podcasts or books or different types of, I guess you would just say like outlets or research engines that you utilize to really educate and empower yourself in this industry?
Shoot, I'll go first. For me, it's really been like studying for this series, securities investment exam. So studying for that has been helpful. There's a few exams that you have to pass in order to help people invest or trade or roll over 401k accounts. So there's areas of entry. So studying for that has been one resource. And then also just the conversations I have and what I call in my meetings and in my joint work meetings. There's especially in the joint work meetings and the more higher level clients, there's a lot of things where I'm like, what is Jonathan asking him about? The conversation is going somewhere where I'm just a little unaware. So I have a ton of notebooks full of pages, and I love kind of just going back and doing some research on it. And what I've been doing as of late, and was just kind of reiterating what things that I think could be helpful to the audience on my social media page, and in explaining it in layman's terms. And that's also been very helpful for myself as well as for others, but just really for myself. And like, can I articulate this in words that can be explained by anyone,
Yeah.
And so like, that's kind of been helpful for me. It's like, books, not necessarily, more so just conversation in the joint work meetings. And then that leading me to like Google wormholes, and a bunch of articles. And yeah, it's a lot of just web research.
I love it. Well, again, information's at our fingertips. And I think it's funny because I got to always do that Ode shout out. Dr. Reinleitner, he was one of like the goofiest professors or teachers I ever had at that school, but he taught me the one, like a core foundation of kind of like my ideology and how I approach training, like spiritual work, whatever it is I'm working with clients, is until you can break something down and explain it to a child, you don't understand it. And that's been so pivotal for me in terms of this stuff, because it's like,
True.
I've had to just do a lot of research on the financial world myself, just because like I want to talk with my brother about it, want to establish that connection. I'm just like, okay, well, I gotta understand what the hell he's saying.
He's talking these acronyms and such,
to digest it. Yeah, it's a lot.
Yeah.
So in terms of Gary, what else? What are some little recommendations you got for the people? I know you gave up that Bigger Pockets podcast, and that's
that's definitely one I would tap into. And I wrote a couple things down here. I think number one, as far as the way that I've been able to learn and obtain knowledge, and the best thing that I would say that's given me the most yield on return on investment is probably mentorship. Number one, and Sean had went into that. You had brought that up, and that's a question I definitely wanted to address, because mentorship has been the absolute game changer in terms of getting me to the place that I need to get, and having accessibility to somebody who already has the experience. And that's a game changer that a lot of people forget, or they just don't realize it because they never had it, right? A lot of people are born into privilege, and they're born into opportunities and business savviness and all this knowledge and stuff. And there's a lot of people who aren't born into it. So if you don't have that mentorship or that guidance, you got to go find that. Like, that is so important. I would say that my relationships have been the number one contributor to my success more than anything. Besides being who I am as an individual, my relationships have gotten me all the freaking opportunities that I've had in life, and some of my best opportunities, and the things that have challenged me the most in life and pushed me to grow the most in life has been through my relationships. So I can go off on a whole tangent about that, but I'll leave that right there: mentorship and relationships. And number two is just self-knowledge and ongoing learning. Just so we talked about a podcast, you have to constantly be teaching yourself relevant information and figuring out what it is that you want to learn, and then just tapping into books. So a couple books I have. Number one is The Four Agreements. I think this is a great, I wouldn't be surprised if you ran through this, Peter. Yeah, I was gonna say you probably know all about it. But The Four Agreements by I think Don Miguel Ruiz is probably one of the best just fundamental baseline books I would put out there for anybody to just get their mental right, get their just I guess just foundation built as far as being able to build some mental and spiritual strength to get to where you need to go. So The Four Agreements is number one. And then another like just business type of book I would say that's really good for entrepreneurs is Be Your Own Brand. This is one book that I tapped into this book, and it kind of just changed the way that I view the way that I present myself to the world and what I'm really trying to get across, and how to, remain relevant and influence people is being your own brand and embodying what that means for you. And then right now I'm also in a book club. So shout out to my book club, the Greater Purpose Book Club.
Love it.
But it's called the Way of the Superior Man. It's right. You probably can't see it because my little background or whatever, but you can probably get a glance at it.
Still phasing out.
Phasing out, but it's called
crazy.
I know, C-Town. It's called The Way of the Superior Man, a spiritual guide to mastering the challenges of woman, work, and sexual desire. And this is one that, I'm in my later 20s now, and I would say, I don't want to get to the details of this, but women have not necessarily, women has never been like a problem, but it could create some drama and some distractions in your life if you don't manage it correctly. And it's a real challenge of young men, and people don't maybe have those conversations as much as they should. But I started, after reading this book, it just really gave me some of the mentality shift that I needed when it came to my interaction with women and what that means, and even how to treat women, and just being a man and being your own man and not expecting certain things out of women too. Like a woman's not supposed to make you feel whole. You need to be your own man first, and it gets into some detail about that. So The Way of the Superior Man is definitely something I would recommend for young men, or just all men, because I'm in my later 20s now and I'm just like enlightened by it. So those are the three books I would recommend.
Ooh, I love it. I guess I'll pitch one out there. I think I might have mentioned this in the show before at one point in time, but I think one of the books that led to my kind of like financial awakening would be Rich Dad Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki. Exactly. Because for me, when I was like reading it, I was just like, when I had all those like those feelings, just like, oh wow, that really resonated with me. I've heard that before, and it was all the things that I, like aligned with the poor dad mentality. I was like, oh no,
wait a second.
What do I got?
Yeah.
And that right there was the concept of like, oh wow, like it really does start this young, that this privilege does arise, in that sense of just, handing off that knowledge and that intuitional sense of just like, this is how you establish generational wealth. This is how you continue to run a business. This is how you establish a business. This is how you use the tax and loopholes. Like just that getting pushed in like a teenager's head. Oh, it blows my mind.
You're right. That's why that it kind of goes hand in hand with that mentorship piece too. Like just finding somebody who's willing to give you some of that game and just give you their time.
So we've been really just chatting for a while now, so we got to wrap this up, folks. But I just want to say thank you again, Gary and Sean, for joining us on Creative Chat. Any last minute shout outs you guys have for the listeners?
I definitely, I feel like we got a lot out as far as what we needed to say, but all this stuff, it isn't complicated. It could be a little bit scary and intimidating as far as finances go, but it all starts with a conversation. I'm an available resource. You guys are going to give out my Instagram and all that good stuff, so you'll know how to get a hold of me, but I'm here, plain and simple.
Yeah, just reiterating what Gary said about accessible, reach out to us, either Instagram, Facebook, can easily get a hold of my contact info, cell phone as well, but we'd love to be a resource for any and everyone. Also really into fitness and training. Come check out Northwest High School if you're into basketball, coaching there this year. Come check out Northwest High School up in Capitol Hill area. And then if you're in West Seattle area and just looking to get sweaty, looking for some fitness, we are training on Dale Ridge Field every Sunday, 11:30. So always into just taking care of the body as well. So tap in.
Oh man, and we got to close this one up, but for our listeners, we're going to be continuing this conversation in our after show. So check it out. We got a lot more insights coming, and enjoy the rest of your evening.
That concludes this episode of Creatives Chat. Thank you for watching. Join us every Thursday at 3:33 p.m. Pacific Daily Time as creative minds get together and chat about who knows what. View more episodes on our YouTube channel. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Thanks again to our sponsors for making this show possible. Thank you, LoyaltyGutterServices.com and WeAreHistorically.com. Conscious Human Apparel.
Hi, I'm Darius Wilrich. I'll teach you everything you need to know about playing jazz piano like a pro with my 12-week online video course and downloadable guidebook, Jazz Piano Pro Essentials. Enroll today at jazzpianopro.com.
Thanks for joining us.